Good evening, everybody. I'd like to call tonight's meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, May 22nd, 2012. It looks like it's 7 o'clock on the dot. Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Booth, good afternoon or good evening, dear. How are you? Could you please call the roll?
Mr. Vituso?
Present.
Mr. Novak?
Present.
Mr. Perry?
Present.
Mr. Sloan?
Present.
Mr. Stecker?
Present.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Present.
Mr. Folia?
Present. We do have a quorum. Item number 4 under presentations. We had a business award, but I don't see Mr. Horak in the audience, so we'll postpone that in case he may show up at a little later time. Item number 5, public comments and questions. Give as many visitors as possible an opportunity to speak, and in the interest of adjourning by 9, please limit your comments to 3 minutes in length, unless further time granted by the board. On the active or general matters under AB, please step up to the microphone, introduce yourself for our clerk and your address, and fire away.
Westchester Illinois. Last time we had our meeting, I came to the board and asked for some help for the seniors. I brought up the fact that they needed something, somewhere to go, something to do, and asked for help or ideas from everyone. Apparently we didn't get any yet, and maybe everybody's working on it. But after that meeting, by only a day or two, I got a phone call. A phone call was made, and I was removed from the contractors list and loaned a foreclosed home. Boom. Because I spoke out for the seniors? I don't understand. It just came out of nowhere. And I was sitting having lunch when I got the message. Nobody said why or anything else. Now I got a bid letter after I raised a little bit of why. Now I'm on the bid list to propose it. I set my goals very high for this village. I outdo more than any other contractor out there. I pay my license, I have my insurance, and I have my bond. And yet, I continuously see people working in this village, no license, no bonds, no insurance. It gets upsetting, because that's money out of my pocket. I volunteered to work weekends. I'll do code enforcement. I was told, what, you with a badge and a gun? Like it was a joke. It wasn't funny. I did it in front of the Park District people as well as village people. And it wasn't, I'm serious about it. This is money out of our pockets, and we're paying taxes. And we're getting nothing. We're letting anybody run rampant. Yeah, go throw a roof on it, do this, do that. And I don't understand it. There's people here that are paying to follow the rules. The lawn mowing, I set the standards. That letter that you sent me is my standards. Trimming, picking up the newspaper, bringing the garbage to the corners, putting the garbage cans back the next day without charge. Those were all my ideas to make the houses look like they were lived in and like they were presentable like their neighbors. And I've done it for 2 years. And now all of a sudden, boom. So I'm just wondering, is there repercussions for talking? I mean, is there something after this meeting now? Or I'm not sure. I'm really wondering how we do this. Now, Janet was nice enough to call me about just before this meeting to let me know, and I told her I found some things that I thought she might address on that letter. And I told her what they were, and we agreed on something. It was just for her knowledge to make it easier to do the job. To come, to look at it and say, well, yeah, this might be this and this might be that. So, I don't know. I'm just asking a question once again. First for the seniors and second for myself. I mean, does a rebuttal?
No, the only thing I could tell you is that there were a number of people that we asked for bids for cutting grass. Yours was one company. There was another company that was doing it. I think we sent out a host of letters, didn't we? To a number of contractors that were licensed and registered. They have a pool of people to see what's out there, how much they charge for certain grass cutting ability.
That part I understand.
There was no angst against you to talk up or talk, whatever.
Then how could you
We
be
were in-
sitting and having lunch and get a message hand-delivered to you, you're out of the draft truck, you're done?
Well, I don't know who delivered any message to anybody.
It
So-
did not come from my office, and it did not come from Sam's office, so
Well, then I guess.
I'm unaware of that.
I guess we have people making decisions that aren't supposed to be making decisions, because there was no stutter, there was no stumble, it was point blank right there. You're out. And so if there are people making decisions, I guess that's up to you guys to find out who it possibly could be. And
What-
also, I never brought up that I charge seniors $150 a lawn. That was even a worse statement.
Who delivered the message to you? I didn't deliver anything to anybody.
No, you did not.
So if it's some staff that delivered the message to you, or was it
It was
through a third party or
staff
whatever?
member. Just let me know, not the bank I'm mowing lawn, because it wasn't
Well,
gonna.
that should be conveyed to the village manager, because that's not the acceptable practice. So I would suggest that you contact her at a later time tomorrow, and if there's, some employee situation that was handled improperly, we will rectify it.
And I can
Similarly, in a similar vein, you had a conversation with the village manager, or left a message regarding a hiccup in the Public Works Department, which we addressed immediately as well. And I think Janet attempted to make a contact to you to get more information and whatever. So I'm here to tell you that if there's some type of impropriety or something that's been said improperly, we're going to get to the bottom of it, and we'll handle the discipline, through the policies and procedures of the village.
Well, I kind of been like a watchdog, I guess you would call it, for all these contractors. Not for just myself, but I mean, for the roofers and for everybody else. And I seem to have a lot of time on my hands, and I can find them very easily. And I'm just saying, if it's happening, then we need to
Well,
stop them and ask them, what are you doing?
for the last couple of years, this has been on my radar, and we are now embarking on the mission of the CSOs, police officers, and code enforcement being done via and through the police department. The chief wanted to get through the NATO situation. She's well aware of the situation that's out there. You not being an employee, it's very difficult. We expect people who are citizens to see violations that may or may not be happening, to certainly contact the proper authorities, being called the police department, and we'll certainly check those individuals out to see who's licensed, who's registered, or whatever. I've certainly spoken to Janet and Mr. Urban before her about putting all of our contractors online. So if you want to see a contractor and you're looking for an electrician, at least you could find 10 or 12 or how many we have that are licensed, bonded, insured, or whatever they have to do online, so people know who's there. Similarly with lawn care personnel, they're required to be licensed, et cetera, et cetera. So this is not something that's new. It's just something that has not been implemented at this time, which we are in the process of doing, in as much as we're certainly in a search for Dennis's replacement, and as a community person as well, but we're moving the enforcement end to the police where it belongs. 24/7, the police are out there, and if they see somebody pounding nails on a roof and they don't see the yellow placard, I want them to get out of their squad cars and at least make a cursory inquiry. And hopefully, we can get coverage on the weekends, which you and I both know the mystery white trucks come in and do all kinds of work, where you're absolutely correct. Guys like yourself, that are licensed and bonded and do their thing, are being cheated because fly-by-night people are coming in without insurance. And as a matter of fact, the information you supplied on the phone is in my news article coming up for June, in as much that if somebody that's not licensed and not bonded gets injured on personal property, that homeowner's liability insurance may be encumbered to cover that loss of that uninsured person. So I'm putting everybody on notice that does exist, and that is a real possibility, and they should make sure that they have their yellow placards in the window and to call us to see whether or not some type of permit is required, depending on what job they may do. So those things are being addressed. I wish they would have been addressed a lot earlier than today, but I'm taking one step at a time.
I won't send the village a bill for my blood pressure medicine because, you know, we'll let it slide. But when I came home from the Village Arlington Heights auction on Saturday, holding my driveway, and at one side I had one contractor working, on the other side I had one contractor working, and one contractor behind me, in one block radius. One putting up a wall and replacing sidewalks, one mowing lawns and trimming bushes, and another one working on a fence and mowing the lawn. And I'm like, I had to go inside, pop 2 pills and just relax because there was no sense. And unfortunately, you know, Frank takes the brunt end of it because I usually have lunch at his place, and unfortunately he's the fall guy when I don't take my blood pressure medicine. As far as the seniors, I don't know what you can do for them. I really don't. I've asked them all these questions. They're afraid. They will not come up to this thing if they have a problem. This podium is not for them. Now, I don't know if we put somebody back there with, you know, some kind of form, and with their, you know, they say, this is my name and this is the question I have. We call and they raise their hand. I don't know, but this is not, and they also don't want to look stupid. They don't want to ask the wrong questions. And this is what I'm hearing. I don't know if you can alleviate that. I mean, they're all different age groups from 65 to, I think the oldest is 87. And,
Well, I can tell you that my phone has messages constantly. Seniors, I talked to one today about the number of foreclosures in the village and why the police reports are reporting all the negative and very little positive. And I mean, we have those conversations that are out there. So.
yeah, I mean, they do have questions, but I mean, even about, okay, Lipinski's office has on this electrical thing that, you know, you can have them do your bidding for you. Nobody told the seniors that there's $150 that Lipinski's office gets them from ComEd, but if you sign up and let them bid your electrical or negotiate your electrical, they lose the $150. And they didn't know anything about it. And then they asked about the new thing with the sewer, you know. I said, what are you asking me? Well, we can't get an answer. Well, you can get an answer, but you have to come and ask it. Or pick up the phone and ask it. But
And the letters went out today. I got the letter from my house that I signed regarding the sewer program. It's been in the newspapers, et cetera, et cetera. If they have a question, they can certainly ask it, we'll answer it.
And the other thing was, I told them that Lipinski's office has 2 teams. And they're looking at a 3rd team. And they will go to places like the British Home. They'll come and pick you up in a bus, the whole bunch, and take you over there, answer all your questions, except for what our village, you know, might be a little different, but about Medicare, Medicaid, your electric bill, how to get this, how to get that. And these teams are trained for that. And I mean, I've been telling them, but maybe it's something we have to put out there so all the rest of them know. I can't talk to all of them. Maybe, you know, we can put it in there and say, hey, these are the opportunities you have. They'll even pick you up. They'll give you the locations, something. And maybe we can get them all together so that they're all on the same page. And you're not getting as many phone calls about the same questions.
Yeah, you know, unfortunately, I don't know about what Mr. Lipinski's got going on right now.
It was in the suburban life, that's how I
I don't know that. I mean, it's the first time I'm here.
Okay, I just did want to clarify that the list of subcontractors is on the new website that was launched a couple of weeks ago. So you can find it there. Anybody who's looking for a licensed contract within the village should be able to get that information now on the website. Also wanted to clarify that we did send out quote letters to every registered lawn care maintenance subcontractor who is licensed with the village. So we did send out approximately 35 letters, and the deadline for submission of those is this Friday.
So,
Thank you.
so you're welcome. Thank you. Anyone else? Hello, sir.
Thank you. Before I get started, I want to thank not only you, village president, and board of trustees for your time and service to the residents and the village of Westchester. Thank you very much for all you do. Getting started, you know, for the longest time, our village has had a reputation of being very tough on certain codes, and I completely get it, respect. very lenient on one. And maybe it's the smallest of all of them, but sometimes it's the biggest. And it's funny, you mentioned grass, but there are just too many, just too many homes that the grass is being neglected. I understand there's a lot of circumstances that might bring that on, but we gotta fix it, because first and foremost, it's the dress up of the village first that makes the biggest impression. I mean, I can tell you this from a story, driving along with a colleague of mine through our town, always talked about how beautiful the village was, and our beautiful apartment buildings and condos, and everything was always well maintained. I think we gotta really get back to just enforce some of the basic codes, and that's our grass. What is that standard? I mean, just thinking about across the street from Paul's house, there's one house in particular that was just hideous. I understand there's circumstances that result in that, but I do also believe, though, that we've all of a sudden become pretty lenient. I don't expect everybody to do a lawn as well as my wife does. Bottom line is, she's always out there, she does, but just cut the grass. Just keep it at something acceptable. And I just think that's something we've completely lost track of. And I don't know what the circumstances are, how we can fix it, but.
Well, what happens is,
Whatever it may be, I don't know.
we have a height limit, I believe it's like 8 inches, and then we send out the cavalry to send the notices out. We always give everybody X amount of days, I think it's 5 to 7 days, to remediate the grass before we go in and hire contractors like Bernie or whatever to cut the grass. So that's kind of where we're at. So guess what? If it doesn't get cut immediately, there's another 5 days of growth, which makes it look 10 times worse.
Right.
So that, we've always been, I don't want to say lenient, but always want to give somebody a time to remediate the situation before we drop the hammer down on them and then, force their hand. But you're absolutely right. There's a number of homes. I know the code enforcement person that's involved in that. Sometimes they're foreclosed homes. The state cannot get off their hands and assist us in putting the maintenance onto the mortgage companies. There seems to be a hiccup downstate. There's a partisan fight regarding that they can't get their stuff together. County's trying to do it as well to try to make the mortgage companies more receptive to taking the ownership, because at the end of the day, it's their building. They're taking it back when somebody walks away. So there is a value that the mortgage company certainly is owned. Again,
I do understand the circumstances, and again, it's just something that we should look out a little bit more after this upcoming summer. And once again, thank you.
and if you wouldn't mind for our clerk, if you wouldn't, Derek, your name and address for our record.
Derek Gordon, 2315 Hawthorne. You guys want to check out the lawn?
Hey, Derek, they cut the lawn by the house, too.
Huh?
The lawn's cut.
Oh, really? Well, that's one of them. 2315 Hawthorne. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right. Anyone else? Once, twice, 3 times. Okay, we don't have any public hearings, I don't believe?
No, we don't.
Okay. Consent agenda, there's items A through F. I understand there's been a revision on item C, that so everybody has it straight, it is a resolution and not an ordinance, is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Attorney? So,
You also need to remove your minutes. Those need to be amended.
okay, so we're going to pull item number B for an amendment. So, item A, C, D, E, and F, the bills, resolution for the private activity bonds in the amount not to exceed $7 million. Ordinance authorizing amendment to purchasing policies and procedure manual. Resolution approving security service agreement. Resolution authorizing economic incentive agreement. Does anyone want anything else pulled other than the change in the minutes? Item F.
Item
Brian.
D.
B?
D as in David.
D. Okay. So we have item A, C, and E for approval, the other ones with discussion. So is there a motion and a second to approve those?
So moved.
ones?
Second.
A, C, and E. A, C, E. Tom, and who was the second? I'm sorry, Frank?
Frankie.
Okay, we'll do a roll call on those. Kathy?
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Polio?
Aye, those items pass. The approval of the minutes. Mike, did you have a
Yes.
change?
The active agenda item calls for the motion being made to approve the budget ordinance, but it doesn't detail how the vote went on that. And I believe it was 4-2, so the minutes should be amended to reflect the manner in which the board members voted.
Okay, so if not, we should have a motion and a second to approve
With those, with
the-
that
with the
amendment.
amendments to those minutes.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
so for item number B, is there a motion and a second to approve the board minutes with the amendment to
So
Mr.
moved.
Durkin?
Second.
I'm sorry, who's that, Tommy?
Yeah.
Tom and Paul? Any additional comments? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? That passes. Okay, item number D. I think, Brian, you pulled that?
We need
A motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
Was it Tom, or Nick
Nick and Wally.
and Wally? Brian, discussion.
On page 18 of the packet, in section 7, chapter 5, section B, I think that any of these change orders that we have, the guidelines should be based on the original guidelines in the aggregate. The way that's written right now, if you have a $2,500 change order on a $10,000 contract, it doesn't require board approval, even though it's really a $500 contract. Basically, you could have a 100% increase in the cost of the project before it's required to come back to the board. So I think that it's treating it as if whatever addition in that contract is a new contract, as opposed to looking at it together in the aggregate. And I think that should be a modification made there.
Page 18?
17.
Well, it's 18 on the computer.
Yeah, it's chapter 5, B, change orders to existing purchase orders. Just note, the only change that was made by the manager and the finance director was that $1,000 to $2,500. So that's your current policy with just that different number in there. That was actually
Well, the $15,000 change was made as well.
pardon me?
The 15,000 within the policy was changed as well.
In this section?
No, I'm just saying. in
No, I'm only
total.
talking about this
Okay.
particular section. The only number that changed in there was from 1,000.
Yes, that's all that I
2,500.
requested, was that
Yes.
the change from 1,000 to 2,500. And then there was a separate one for manager authority.
Right, so
Is
that
not
was your
correct?
existing policy with just the number change on that one, so.
Okay, so, all right, so as I understand it, the only change to the existing policy was increasing the amount from 1,000 to 2,500
In that section.
in that section, okay.
Which is consistent with department head authority.
Okay, that was department head authority. And then Janet, as the manager, is that portrayed or conveyed in a different section of this?
Yes.
Okay.
That's in section 2A, general policy for soliciting quotes. Is your authority going from 1,000 up to 2,500 for department head?
It's on page 14 of your packet.
And the point is that the amended contract would be for 12,500 or 13,000, 14,000, whatever that number is. As you modify a contract that's already required board approval, that you're now circumventing an approval on additional expenses related to that contract.
The one problem I foresee is if you've awarded a contract that's below $15,000. You need board approval if it's 10,000 and above. So you have a $12,501 contract, and then you issue a change order for $2,500. That puts you over the requirement to bid. You've already awarded a contract, so you can't rescind that
Can't go
contract,
backwards.
then go back and bid out that whole contract, even though, as you are pointing out, the total now is $15,001. So it's just a practical problem of you can't, undo what you've already put in place. So
But it would still require the board's approval.
I thought we had any change orders over the contract amount with board approval.
That's not the way this reads. That's how it used to be.
The original policy actually required approval over the $1,000 spending authority. So since we've increased the spending
Well, I mean,
authority
even
from
before
1,000 to
this policy,
2,500?
I think before this policy, anything that was that was part of those change orders, we increased that when this policy was written. We added that $1,000. Before, in past years, before this policy was adopted at all, any change orders to any contract that required board approval had to come before us again. We implemented that $1,000 to allow leeway.
Because I think the whole purpose of having board approval is, that there's some type of viewing if you're having a contract that is $10,000 and we're approved and $2,500 exceeds up and above $10,000, and you can go on and on and on. So I'm going over there right now and I missed this, but I'm not seeing though on page 17.
It's that, yes.
It's in the
Like, I
It's
think
page
under
18 of the packet, page 17 of this thing.
Well, I think,
under change orders to existing purchase orders, item B.
Well, oftentimes, I mean, these change orders can arise due to unforeseen circumstances when once the contract is actually already even in progress. I mean, it would be impossible to stop a contract for unforeseen things and completely stop the contract and bring it back to the board as a whole. And I can foresee in many circumstances. So that's where I guess I'm struggling with this a bit. If we've
But this
given
would allow
department
it
heads
to increase.
authority.
This would allow it to a $10,000 contract. This would allow it to increase 100% before it's required to come back to this board.
actually, a $10,000 original contract, the sentence says, also, any change orders to original contracts of 10,000 or more, that's your level, you need board approval. Any change orders to a contract of 10,000 or more requires approval of the manager and the board. So that will come back for board approval. If the original contract was at 10,000 or more, and you change that contract, that requires board approval. Now, if the contract is $8,000 originally, and you have a change order of $2,500, that's within the authority of the manager.
But I guess I went from slightly confused to fully confused now.
Yeah.
If we have a $10,000 contract, and the contract says, no, it's really $12,500.
Or you could say $10,100, it's gotta come back to you.
So no, it's not comes back. But if I get a $10,000 contract, and we could put in a change order for $1,000, and that won't go back to the board.
No, a change order for a $10,000 contract has to come back to the board.
Regardless of what the amount is.
For $100, for $3,000.
So if somebody bids in at $9,000 where it doesn't require board approval, and they come back with a change order for $2,000 or $3,000, and that contract, as it's now amended, would have required board approval, yet it's not going to under this policy.
That is
And
the
it leaves-
scenario, that's
and-
the scenario that I pointed out, does not come back to the board. But
And
if
it
you're at a
leaves-
$10,000 original it specifically says it comes back to the board.
And I think it leaves open, an area where you're gonna have someone come in and, potentially come in with a lower bid. It avoids the board's approval, and then you just submit a change order, again, under that threshold, and now you're avoiding that review and that approval.
And somebody who came in at higher, which would require.
I think if in any case, if it goes above the $10,000, it should be forced to come back to this board.
Well, I was under the impression when I talked about this last meeting that we were increasing the department head level, and then the village manager asked to increase her level of spending authority to 20,000. The board took that into consideration and said, no, we wanted to make that 15,000.
That was
So
for
whatever was-
bids. That was bids.
Yes, well, no, I was saying spending authority. Was it
No.
not spending
No,
authority?
it
It
was just
stayed at
for
10.
We're getting qualified bids. So
I
we're
got
still bringing anything 10,000
10,000
or to the
or-
board for approval.
Okay, all right.
And
So,
the point is, I think it should say, it should be treated in the aggregate that if any contract reaches that $10,000 with change orders, pluses, whatever,
It should
that
come back to the board.
it's coming to the board and following the policy in total.
Is that the board's understanding of this?
I'm sorry,
This is just the understanding of the board that anything of contract nature of 10,000 and more comes back before
I agree with that.
us with any additional changes that would change the original amount that would give manager authority under that. Is that where we're at?
Right.
And I believe by reference, it's saying that please note any changes above 2,500 require employees to follow the guidelines established in Chapter 3, Section A. So if the change did push under Chapter 3, Section A, if it did push it up to 10,000, then it's under the section village board approval is required.
So you're not going to be looking at this one. This doesn't say aggregate, so I just want to make sure it's not just the change order that you're looking at. If the
No.
change order is $5,000
Right.
on a $6,000 contract, that needs to come to the
Come
board.
back to the board.
Yes.
Okay.
You look a little puzzled.
No, I was just talking to Freddie, because the only thing is I know we had talked about how things have gotten relatively more expensive. And we had an instance where our ladder truck went in for like new springs and blah, 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 and it was gonna be like an $8,000 job. Well, they open it up, they got it all open, all of a sudden they find all these other things, and now it's turned into a $12,000, $15,000 job. And I'm just worried that,
Well, I think something like that would fall under the.
Emergency
We're gonna have to-
repairs.
But I'm saying, wouldn't that fall under her authority of the 15,000 level?
well,
No,
that's what I'm
requires
trying.
board approval at 10,000.
But see, that's what I'm saying, is that now we're gonna have to have special meetings, or we're gonna have to,
But I.
because, I mean, you may run into those lots of times with the vehicles. I mean, some of these, some of these really expensive, public works, the machinery, the fire apparatus, they open it up, all of a sudden, it's opened up.
But don't we have an
You know.
emergency?
There is an exception
I
for
don't know.
emergency
Yeah, is there-
repairs.
Okay, all right, well, that's what I'm,
And that obviously would be a critical piece of equipment would qualify under
Well,
that's why I'm
I
just
guess the
concerned.
question right now is, Janet, are you comfortable with working with the guidelines that are proposed in the policy with bringing those change orders in excess of $10,000 back to the board? Is that any hiccup on your part?
No, I believe we can work within those parameters.
Well, then it's.
I think that'll require some language change, though. It needs to say in the aggregate. Because your old policy, when that change order was at $1,000, and the board approval and the bidding were both at 10,000, this policy allowed you to have a $9,500 contract without bidding, without board approval, and it allowed a $1,000 change order that pushed you above $10,000 without having to come back and get board approval. So if you want that aggregate concept in there, the words have to be put in here, and they're not, as it stands now. Because the only thing that changed, once again, was that number went from 1,000 to 2,500. The concept of coming back to the board wasn't touched.
Then I'd ask that this be tabled till the next meeting so that we can
Well-
make the amendments to the agreement, or to the policy.
You don't feel that the reference to Chapter 3, Section A is sufficient? Because
No,
that,
because
that
I think
shows
that
the
just-
parameters.
I think that's just, it says, any changes above 2,500 require them to go to that paragraph, and between 2,500 and $10,000, all you need to do is get the quotes, et cetera. Which you're not gonna be, in theory, thinking about it, you're not gonna go back and get 3 vendor quotes for that. You're dealing with a contractor that's doing the work. You're gonna approve a change order, or you're not gonna approve the change order. The question is, manager do it, or village board do it? So you tell me what you want to accomplish, and I'll tell you whether this language currently allows for that.
Well, but okay, so now you've removed the accountability of the vendor. I know now, just, again, I'm gonna bid $9,000, cause I know I can walk away with 2,500, so my bid's gonna be 11,500. Brian comes in with a 10,000, I beat him, but not really, cause I'm gonna charge 11,500. You know, there's no accountability. I didn't know about that policy piece and what you just previously said, but I think this is something that, you know, we had issues with copiers that were at $9,900 to go under the bid. You know, now you put a change order on that, now you're over the bid 10,000.
There's no problem
So
making the change. I'm just telling you that this language doesn't reflect what you just said. It needs to have an aggregate reference put in there.
I'm all
And,
for putting the language into.
well, I thought there was, it seemed like that's the way the
Well,
board
I think
was
there's a
going anyway.
consensus that we go ahead and make that change, so if we could table this till the next meeting.
Okay. Is that the consensus? Well, I can give you the language now so you can pass it tonight.
That's fine.
Yeah, let's do that.
So it should read, please note that any changes that raise the aggregate contract price to $10,000 or above requires prior approval of the village manager and village board.
Now, Mike, do we still need to have some of that reference to Chapter 3 so that any other change orders to other contracts are still following the stipulations in the other part of the policy?
Yes, you do. So that sentence will be repeated in there. So
Okay.
we will we'll clean that up, but that's the concept.
Okay, thank
So
you.
you still have to follow the procedures. If it doesn't raise you above 10,000, go ahead and get it accomplished. But if it's going to kick you in total price to 10,000 or above, it's got to come back to the board. Is everyone clear? Molly, clear? Everyone clear? Janet? It'll work?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So is there a motion and a second to approve item D with the statements that Attorney Durkin placed in reference to both pieces of the policy?
So moved.
Second.
Frank and Wally. Kathy, roll call, please.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. D'Souza?
Aye.
Mr. Correa?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, the other one that was pulled was item F, is that not correct?
Correct.
Okay, is there a motion and a second for the approval of the resolution authorizing economic incentive agreement? Motion by
So moved.
Nick
Second.
and Frank. Discussion.
I still believe that we could do something better than 100,000, as I've discussed in the previous board meeting. I think this is a good area for us to put a vendor to the test. I should say, put a vendor, but put this 1% agreement, the scope is different in my mind than the previous 31st and Wolf. So I think there's some room there for, movement. You know, it's 100,000, what I'm talking about is the 100,000 cap. You know, something like a 75,000 cap, to hold, feet to the fire.
Brian?
I notice in this agreement, contrary to the one that was executed for 31st and Wolf, 31st and Wolf referenced specifically 1% of a rebate. I think if you're going to do this, you should reference exactly what that 1% that was discussed is. If the if the state or somebody were to increase the sales tax rate, that benefit should be to the benefit of the village, not to developers. So there was no reference in particular just to that 1% rate. So I think that should be added to the agreement. I also think it should be over a shorter term. I think we should be doing a 50-50 split or some sort like we did with Walgreens. This really wasn't negotiated. The guy comes in and says, this is what I want. It's like, okay, you're going to give it to him. I think there needs to be some type of negotiation here for the, on the part of the village to get something that's going to benefit the village. The developer himself admitted that he's asking for the same agreement that was given to 31st and Wolf, yet 31st and Wolf has significant higher operating costs going forward than he would have at this location. So I don't think it's the best deal for the village, and I think something better than that could be negotiated. But at a minimum, I'd ask that the 1% specifically be stipulated in the agreement.
Comment, Paulie?
The 1% is fine, Brian, that you said. I agree with that. Stipulate that. If it goes up, down, it comes to us. I don't have a problem with that. I still think the length of time doesn't make a difference. For one reason, if his projections are what they are at $800,000 in 10 years, the total we would collect would be $80,000 anyway. I don't think he'll ever make that 100. I hope he does, because that means business is well, and we'll make more money on top of it. We're still getting the 1% sales tax on the places for eating tax. He could take all his chairs out and say, I'm not paying that either. So he's willing to stay and do that also. So we are getting some benefit to it. We're getting 1% regardless. And if we pass the other sales tax, we'll be getting 2%. So we'll be getting $16,000 a year from that business. And then hopefully he flourishes, and then in 10 years from there, we'll be getting, $24,000. So, but at any point in time, he may pull his chairs and we lose that 1% also. So, I think what we should do is let's work with it in 10 years. I feel that, I hope he will hit his goal in 7, and we'll be done in 7, because I think that corner will do very well. It's been long coming. The other place on Manheim, I think he'll do well there too. I mean, he's a very good businessman. He's operating multiple Dunkin' Donuts, and he's done very well in all of them. Our incentive, it's not unusual. Our incentive is probably basic than what we have. I've gotten offers for that for my place. Darien and a few other places have come to me to put my store in their towns at the same thing and more. So that incentive is not, not unique to us. It's been out there. So I do feel that we should go through it. And I hope that he does it in 5 years, because it'll only benefit us. The dollar figure is $100,000. Whenever he hits that, if he hits that, or the time. So, I think we go with it. I don't think we should change it. I do agree with the 1%. Stipulate that 1%. What Brian says, yeah, that's fine.
I'm not seeing that 1% in the proviso agreement, so. I don't know if somebody has a copy of that with them. It provided that we would rebate our share of the retailer's occupation tax
Right, from the state.
until he hit that mark. So I'm not seeing that 1% in there. So.
Unless it was in a cover letter. It was in the, I know it was in the documents that were provided to the board.
I think that's what it equals, but I don't
Can we
believe
add
there
that
was a reference.
stipulation?
Pardon me?
Can we still add that stipulation?
Of course.
Thank you.
Sure.
Would there be an issue if the state, so if the state sales tax were to change over that 10-year period, we would still then, is that what you're looking for, Brian, that we would still only
Any additional amounts would come to the village.
remit 1%?
If the village's share were to rise above 1%, you want that to flow to the village rather than to the developer.
Correct.
You'd have to put language in there that would provide for that. So,
Okay, any other comments? I agree that that would be a good addition in the event, God knows what the state's going to do as far as taking some of the local distributive share, it's back on the table again. So there's a few things that are out
well,
there.
I was just going to comment, I think it may go in the other direction. They may be more tempted to take that 1% and lower it. I don't know if they'd be inclined to give you more, but I could put language in there to that effect.
A maximum of 1%, something like that.
Okay. Any other comments? Nikki, Frankie, Donnie?
I'm good with the 1%.
Anything? Okay, there's a motion, a second on the floor to approve the resolution authorizing economic incentive agreement with the 1% stipulation on there. The amount of the resolution is the $100,000. Kathy, please call for the vote.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
No.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
No.
We have
And me.
another person they call.
Mr. Poyer?
Aye as well.
It's 5-2.
Okay, active agenda. Resolution approving insurance brokerage service contract. Motion in a second.
So moved.
Second.
Paul? And Wally? Janet? Information? Anything to share?
No, we did get some good news the other day from our appointed brokers saying that they have been able to reduce our initial quoted rates for the year by 2%. So we're expecting a 3% increase. They're anticipating they can get it down to approximately 1% increase over the prior year, which is great.
If I could comment on what's in your, this document is a red line version with some changes that my office suggested. We do have a response from Gallagher with regard to including some of those, but not all. There is a certification that is required on here that I didn't receive a response from them yet, and I don't know if they got back to you, Janet, on that.
Not at this time.
Okay, so it would be subject to approval of the form by the manager and the village attorney. So the form that you have in there is just a proposed changes, and I know it doesn't reflect the actual agreement of the parties, even as we sit here today. I do have a copy with the changes that they sent back later today, but I don't have that certification language. And I would insist that the document that they had didn't have the certification language in it. I can agree to all of their changes with the addition of they must sign the certification. It's mandatory under state law, so.
So as drafted, with that being mandatory, there really should not be any issues with the contract beyond that point.
I would hope they would realize that since they're contracting with a local government, they have to sign that certification.
No.
Which basically says, they will comply with certain statutes, so.
So the motion and second is on the floor, subject to the certification that you're seeking?
Yes.
That's
And I
correct.
just wanted on the record that what you have in there is the more inclusive draft. It doesn't reflect the agreement of the parties. We took their form, modified it. They took some of our changes, not all of them, so.
Okay. So,
I would also point out they originally had a 3-year proposal. This is down to 1 year, and it's got a 30-day kickback clause, so.
Okay. So the motion and second is on the floor for approval with the items that need to be signed off on before total approval is made. Kathy, please call the roll.
Mr. Sloan?
No, but they gave us the.
Again. Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Mr. Pulia?
Aye. Motion carries. Item number B, resolution approving fiscal year 2013 MFT projects. Motion and a second.
So moved.
Second.
Nick. Frank. Hope, discussion.
In order to spend MSC money from the state of Illinois, you have to approve, in order to spend maintenance money from the state of Illinois, you have to approve a resolution yearly laying out what you're going to use the money for. This is separate from our bond payment, which is in a different form, and it's also separate from any large projects that we do with MSC funds. This is just for maintenance items. So the one I handed out is different than the one that's in the packet. I had to rearrange some stuff on it to meet kind of what we're actually doing somewhere a little bit better. And then this goes to the state of Illinois, and then they approve it, and they'll take it off the money that they've authorized us to spend.
So which one has the appropriate sum?
The one I handed out tonight, the
278,
278, 470.
407.80, correct? Okay.
Where is this in the budget?
I gotta track things differently than we do. So, for example, just because we put stuff in the NFT budget in the past doesn't mean that it's actually come off our authorizations from IDOT. So this does not match our budget, our NFT budget. This is a separate IDOT NFT budget, which correlates with the amount that they say that we still have left to authorize. They don't correlate.
So Brian, many of these items are actually included in various public works line items in the general fund. So we just don't, to differentiate, this is not the MFT fund that we determine as a fund, that this is not included in that budget. We can use MFT funds from our general fund as long as they're authorized out of those MFT dollars.
So
By
do
the
we,
state.
do we have a, I guess as you say, another ledger over with the, with the state? Do we know what that balance is as far as what we have approved?
Yes, we get a monthly total.
And this has nothing to do with the revenue coming into the MFT fund?
It does in that MFT allots us X dollars per year, and we can only use that on authorized items. But the IDOT is not concerned with our MFT fund versus our general fund. They just are assuring that the motor fuel tax allotments are spent on authorized projects. So from a line item budget perspective, some of these things may be in the general fund, but they have been approved by IDOT for the expenditure of MFT funds. So it's almost like an interfund transfer, if you were going to look at it from a journal entry standpoint.
So it's revenue that would have been reported in the MFT fund that's going to be in the general fund because they're maintenance items?
Well, we have, the way that the MFT fund has been budgeted, the majority of the funds are going for our debt service on our bonds.
Right.
And those are budgeted in the MFT fund. We have other items budgeted in the MFT fund, such as asphalt, various other road improvement type things, to account for the expenditure of all of the MFT funds for the year. We can earmark funds outside of that MFT fund to use to expend those dollars. For example, right now, the asphalt projects are kicking off, and so we're going to be using funds to pay for asphalt partially at this point.
What is the source of revenue?
It is the MFT allocations. It's
So-
just,
so we're-
there's a different allocation from our accounting budget versus the IDOT approval process.
But we're directing funds that would have been in the MFT fund to pay for general fund expenditures.
I would not say that that's, no. I'm saying that we have this IDOT allocation. IDOT has pre-approvals for expenditure. They want to see this budget. So Hope has come up with all the eligible costs that could conceivably.
I understand that part.
Mhm.
I understand they have to approve it. I understand that it's
Right.
these, there's certain projects they approve. From the funding standpoint, if we budgeted saying we're getting $450,000 in 2013, I don't know what the number was, but if we said $450,000 in MFT funds to go into the MFT fund, are we decreasing that money that is going to go in the MFT fund in the budget in any way through this process?
No. It's just
Are we redirecting the expenses to be recorded in the MFT fund then?
not really. No, the MFT, in fact, so Hope has put together this budget. This is all conceivable eligible things, and if you notice, this does not include the debt service. So she's come up with projects of $278,000 that would be eligible for IDOT funds. So in the event we were to receive excess MFT funds, some kind of windfall or whatever, all of these things would fall under approved MFT projects.
So
We, in reality, have about $150,000, I think, left from our budget after we pay our debt service. But we have to submit this to IDOT annually, so we're trying to put everything that would be eligible conceivably to IDOT. So this budget will exceed the allotments we're going to get. But these are all authorized projects
So what we're
to come out of the money.
is what we're saying is, here at IDOT, this is what we would like to spend, but budget is only allowing us to spend X amount of dollars in MFT. If for some reason Uncle Charlie gives us $1 million in the MFT fund, we then could, because we've already put these projects through, we can now spend them out of the MFT.
Yes, if we were to get some unforeseen windfall of MFT dollars,
Okay.
we could
So
do
But
that.
we're still
And-
spending what the budget's allowing, what we budgeted.
Yes, we are not going to
And we're not gonna take out of the general
overexpend
fund.
our financial budget.
And we're
So-
not gonna take out of the general fund to meet these expenditures.
So actually, you're saying we have some shovel-ready projects that we want you to approve, ready to go. If we get this money, we'll go forward.
Correct.
Okay.
So that they're pre-approved, basically it's a pre-approval
So
process
we don't
from
have to
IDOT.
wait for that process to be approved again.
Right, and quite frankly, we've been, Hope has been revisiting this process. We have probably not been as astute as we should have been the last several years with reporting all available projects to IDOT. So we're in the process of, we have it on our project list to go back and reevaluate the last several years and make sure that we have reported everything allowable to IDOT to show that, to release the restricted funds. Like when they give us a report, they show what they've given us, what they're saying they've identified as being spent on allowable projects, and then they show us a balance that they're waiting for accountability for, or something like that. And we know we have a little issue that we're resolving with that. So for this year, we want to be proactive and get this into them in advance in a timely manner and get these projects approved so that they can go against those earmark funds from IDOT.
So if we've only earmarked $110,000 in 2013, we're still only going to be spending the $110,000 out of MFT for this 278. The difference would have to come from general fund revenue.
Right, but this is not, this is, yes. I'm sorry, I'll just say yes. For
Here's
example,
maybe this makes more sense. So from the standpoint, if we submitted them the request to add back the salt, which we moved back into the general fund, or we moved it here, whichever way it was.
we actually
moved
moved
it-
it back.
We
to-
put it back in,
Yes,
okay, we did. So had the salt not been in the MFT fund, and we submitted a request to include it in our proposed budget to IDOT, if our revenues for MFT came in higher, we would then be able to use it towards that expense?
Right, and if you'll notice on here too, there are things in here that we don't account for in this manner in our financial budget. For example, IDOT allows us to assign a rental value for our street sweeper. So you'll see Hope's got $117,000 in here for the value of our street sweeper over the 8 months that we are sweeping streets. So obviously that is not a budgeted expenditure for our financial budget purposes. Also, we're allowed to calculate labor for that activity. So you'll see the $41,971. That's labor that is in our general fund public works budget. So this doesn't really have a dollar for dollar correlation to what we're doing with the financial budget. It's just giving us the spending authority through IDOT to account for the freeing up of those restricted MFT funds.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions that need to be answered regarding it? Okay. All right, there's a motion and a second on the floor, I believe, by Nick and Frank.
This didn't appear on a cow, did it? Did this appear on a cow?
I'm sorry.
This request, did it appear before us in a cow meeting?
I don't think so.
I don't think it did.
I don't think so.
Right, then we have
Did
to
Hope go?
change.
Hope,
Need a motion to waive?
Hope, was this talked at before at the cow? It was not.
Motion to
Okay,
waive.
so there's a motion.
Requirement.
Let's go back. Is there a motion and a second to waive that requirement of appearing on the cow before it appeared today?
So
Motion
moved.
by Nick,
Second.
second by Tom. Roll call. Kathy?
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Foley?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, now, there was a motion on the floor by Nick and Frank for the approval based on the presentation. Roll call. Kathy, please.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Foley?
Aye. Motion carries. Item number C, resolution appointing village engineer for fiscal year 2013. In my review of the appointment powers of the Office of the President, I see that in addition to attorneys and other appointments, that the village president can proffer to the board with board approval, resolution appointing a village engineer. I know we've had a discussion in the past of professional services, and I think we've made the analogy that we've hired a village attorney to handle that, and that we don't go out for breaking up different legal situations. We rely on our village attorney to handle pretty much each and every one of those items as well. So with that in mind, I've asked that we, for this year, 2013, approve a resolution appointing the Christopher Burke Engineering Firm for this year as the village engineer. So, with that in mind, is there a motion and a second for approval?
So moved.
Second.
Wally and Paul. Okay, discussion? Wally?
I just have a question. That's, with appointing a village engineer, I assume the village engineer's role is similar to council's role?
Yes, sir.
Will the village engineer be also an aggregate or an integral part in our bid process, establishing bids, monitoring bids, and reviewing bids?
Well, I think the village engineer, just like village council, is going to be handling those engineering projects, just like prior to this year, I believe Hancock Engineering had all the engineering in the village. If it was something outside the scope of his, then we went out to counter Townsend or whatever the deal is.
But I think there's some times where bids go, we are out of the scope of what the engineering.
If that's the
So-
case, then those would go out
Because I know
to.
we've already had some issues with bids.
Well,
through
you
it.
have to remember, and this was where there was some confusion in the past, and even in myself. A professional service, you don't bid for professional service. In this case here, just like with our attorney, he handles the in-house counsel operation, he handles the negotiation pieces. We don't go out and say, Kleinthorpe and Jenkins, you handle our negotiations for police and fire contracts, or police contract, fire contract, it's all in-house. So in effect, we're putting an in-house engineering firm in place to do the projects for 2013.
Right, but my question is, so we have engineering looks at our street projects, but ABC company does the paving.
Yes.
Chris Berg doesn't go out and pave streets.
No, this is
So-
for engineering service.
So the bid, we would go to bid for the paving of the streets,
That's
correct?
correct. Right.
So would Chris Burke be an integral part of putting that bid together and monitoring the
sure.
bid process?
Oh,
and so we don't have this, oops, and well, maybe, and,
Well, what we've had in the past is 3 perfectly good engineering firms throw in proposals that were similar and dissimilar to get to an end result. So this cuts through that under the purview of the appointment power of the president to have a village engineer. Right. Paul had Hancock, and I think other presidents before had that. They're all competent firms, but under the purview, I'm proffering that, so we're not into this, well, Wally can paint a car red this way, and this could do it this way, and this could do it this way. At the end of the day, we're looking at a red car, and there's 3 different ways to get there, whether you use lacquer, enamel, or water-based paint. So,
Well, that mean, and basically, they would do the design, the engineering, and the on-site inspections. It would be done by Christopher Burke, and also the bid process also. Because they would be all to get the reputable bidders, state, that they're qualified and everything else. So he would be your engineer that does everything. So he would be the one on-site, making sure, doing the cores, see if there's, 8 inches of blacktop and so much C4. He would handle all that.
Okay.
So,
I'd point out that they're only going to do what you assign them to do. And they're capable of doing all that, but if you wanted to prepare a bid in-house, you could prepare a bid in-house. They're only going to do what you actually ask them to do. And I'm sure they'd be willing to do all of those things, but you do have to assign it to them, so.
So we're no longer going out for RFPs for any consulting, and the whole notion that we were going to use one engineer for excuse me, for the design phase, another engineer for the construction phase to make sure there's some checks and balances. That's all gone now.
yes, we're appointing a village engineer that we feel is competent to do the job for 2013, similar to what we've had in the past up until the last couple of years, where seems a whole lot of consternation over engineering and how we're getting from A to B.
Just one more question, sorry. So
Right.
this is a renewed appointment?
This would be 1 year.
Okay.
1 year, 2013.
Okay.
To April 30th, or whenever the next term is. Yeah.
Okay,
So,
gotcha.
2013. So, any other questions? If not, the motion and second is on the floor for 2013. Kathy, call the roll.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Carey?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
No.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurgovich?
Aye.
Mr. Kulia?
Aye. Motion carries. Okay. Item number D, resolution amending the multi-hazard mitigation plan. Motion and a second for approval.
So moved.
Brian, second.
Second.
Paul, you could have it this time.
Because it's Wally.
Wally, why don't you
Everybody
enlighten us?
turn to page 1.
Start from
This
page
is an ongoing, we have submitted a multi-hazard mitigation plan. It is, we need approval. This is going for our CSR ranking, to get discounts in flood insurance, and also to get this approved by FEMA, which will open up doors. So we're, went through the IEMA process, now we're going to FEMA. So this kills two birds with one stone, so to speak. And also in the cow meeting.
And all this is an amendment to the original plan that was approved before that required a few more hoops.
Correct.
Okay.
If somebody's got an objection, you gotta raise it, so.
Is there a question, Tom?
I was just thinking, did the village engineering, this ever come before a cow meeting?
No.
I don't believe so.
I thought
But
we talked
it's
about
his
it.
appointment, though.
I thought in your comments you said we have discussed it in the past, so
Oh, no, I
I assume since nobody raised an issue, that everybody was in agreement with that it has been
I
discussed
thought it has been
in the
talked
past.
Well, the-
Actually,
So-
the last comments about engineering was that you were gonna appoint V3 to do the relining of the section of sewers here.
I thought it was, the staff was going to look at all three firms to come up with one suitable to be appointed, and that was,
Well, my comments were relative to the discussion back when we were looking at the Sunnyside project, where we talked about how do we make the process better, and there were really no comments of how to make it better. In the review of the authority under the village president and appointment powers to appoint an engineer, I'm exercising that right,
So do we need to, so there's no vote needed?
so,
but the appointing policy, I believe it's written.
written.
Jeez. I'm sorry. But it still needs board's approval,
Advice and consent of the board, right?
but I thought we talked about this, though.
What do you think, Mike?
I mean,
My recollection was there've been numerous discussions about appointing attorneys from time to time. I'll say it again, if somebody believes, whenever you have a topic
can't-
come up,
I can't cite one, though.
I don't think you can sit back and wait until the vote is concluded, but since you've done that, if you want to unwrap this, you need a motion to reconsider, and then you would take a motion to waive that requirement. It requires 5 votes of the 7 of you. Since the motion passed 6-1, I would assume that that motion to waive would at least pass 6-1. If somebody's got a concern, then you need to raise that issue to the chair, and the chair can rule on whether you talked about it previously in a cow. There seems to be several of you saying that you did. My recollection is you discussed it, but if somebody wants to raise that issue, the chair's gonna need to rule on it.
I
No.
think we should.
I have no
follow
problem
legal process.
reconsidering to put it back
Okay,
in the game, so.
Somebody should move, somebody that voted
there a
in the
motion?
affirmative
So
needs
moved.
to move, and somebody that seconded it, who
Second.
voted in the affirmative, is a motion to reconsider.
Okay,
You can take a voice vote to reconsider.
okay. Is there a motion and a second from Frank and Tom to reconsider item number C? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Okay, so it's reconsidered. Now, is there a motion and a second to waive the requirement of of appearing on the cow this evening? Motion and a second by
So moved.
Second.
Tom and Paul. And a roll call on that, Kathy.
Mr. Novak?
Just, we are voting to waive.
Waive
allow the vote
the
today.
requirement
Okay.
of a
Aye.
COW.
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
No.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Foya?
Aye. So now, back to the motion to approve. There was Nick and Frank, I believe, were the motions to approve.
Well,
Let's
you need to make the
reaffirm
a
again.
maker and a seconder
All right.
again.
Is there a motion and a second to approve item number C this evening of the
So moved.
engineer? It was Tom? Okay.
No, that was Paul's voice.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That could be Tom.
All right, Paul, and who's the second?
Second.
Nick. All right. Okay. Kathy, roll call again. I'm sorry.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
No.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Tuso?
Aye.
Mr.
Aye.
Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Fulia?
Aye. Okay, thank you for cleaning that up.
So are we done with that now?
We're done with that one.
Unless someone moves to reconsider.
Okay. So,
It's a good catch.
Reconsider the flood mitigation.
I'm not sure that we did item number D with the
Okay.
multi-plan.
I did
Now-
make the motion.
But
Okay.
we made a motion, it was on discussion.
Brian and Paul,
Right.
and then we backtracked.
And Wally,
Okay.
you had just finished all 178 pages.
This did appear on the cow.
I was just gonna
meeting.
ask, is everybody in
In our
agreement
prior-
that this
Yeah,
was on a
this-
In our prior
COW
meeting.
meeting?
Okay, so there's a motion and a second on the floor for the approval of the amendment to the mitigation plan. Kathy,
I
roll
think
call,
so.
please.
What page, Paul?
I'm sorry, can we go slowly?
Brian
And
and
Paul.
Paul.
Thank you.
Wasn't there only one substantive change to that this amendment
No, there was
is
a few
reflecting?
changes.
Can you define substance?
Dizzy.
Well, do you wanna just speak to what those were? Because we have the entire document in the
Okay.
record.
The elimination of what to do prior, during, and after a disaster was eliminated. A schedule was put in with earthquake instances throughout Cook County. And then there were just some spelling adjustments, and I believe the addition of one document in the appendix, which was the approval of the plan in the previous March vote.
Okay, so the plan is going to go forward as amended
Yes.
for approval. Kathy, please call the roll.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Yes.
Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Mr. Fulia?
Aye, motion carries. Okay, item number E, I'm informed, has not been on the cow, and it's a resolution for authorizing professional auditing service with Sickage LLP for 2012 audit. So,
I would point out that it was a long time ago, but 2 years ago, you approved an agreement with Sickich that had 2 one-year options.
Right.
So if you feel that that was too long ago to have been considered at a COW meeting, then I would urge you to raise that at this point so that we can waive it instead of trying to unwrap the
all
baby.
right, let's do it clean. Is there a motion and a second to waive the requirement?
I'll make a motion to waive the requirement to
Okay.
appear before cow.
Second.
Brian and Tom. Kathy, roll please.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Gattuso?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Fulia?
Aye, motion carries. Okay, now, is there a motion to second to approve the resolution authorizing Sickich for 2012 audit?
So moved.
Brian
Second.
again,
Second.
and Wally. Janet, any conversation?
No, just would like to point out that myself, having been an prior employee of Sickich, and Ann has also worked at 2 other municipalities that have used Sickich, we both feel that they do have the greatest depth of resources to serve us. However, in light of certain factors over the past year, we have asked for a complete change in the management team, so we will have a new audit partner and manager assigned to the account that we're demanding that. And I've also asked them to hold their fees at the 2011 rates, which they're going to build into their engagement letter with a qualifier that if something goes south, then they'll go back up to these proposed rates. So we're trying to get the fees held, and we will have already determined our new management team for the auditors.
Yeah, there was 3 years that they gave us
Yes.
prices, so they're willing to reduce those in year.
To hold them at the 2011,
Okay.
right, at the 2011 rates.
And I'd point out that you can't vote on this then, since you worked for them before.
I don't vote.
I know.
And the proverbial Chinese wall will be up. These are not going to be members that you worked with in the past, or
Well, quite frankly,
or is that not avoidable?
it's not it's
Okay.
unavoidable, right. However, there were certain aspects, quite frankly, of the client service that I was not happy with last year, so that's why we requested a change in the management team. So we still have the resources that the firm has to offer, but with a completely different oversight to the audit process.
And we have a guarantee we're gonna get the report on time next year.
Absolutely.
One of the, and you know what, this has nothing to do with this, though. It's the audit is about getting reports reviewed by the board, but it's.
Well, we can
It's
talk
not-
about that on the
okay.
call or with Ann's report. She's going to be
Okay.
Thanks, Wally.
discussing that.
You know, we've had a confusing meeting. Why not throw a little bit more in there?
Okay. It's all set. Under manager's report.
Do we have to vote on it?
No,
We
I'm
have
sorry.
to vote.
I'm sorry. It's been one of those days. Okay, the motion is second on the floor for the resolution authorizing professional auditing services. Kathy, please call the roll.
Mr. Yurkovich?
Aye.
Mr. Katsouko?
Aye.
Mr. Novak?
Aye.
Mr. Terry?
Aye.
Mr. Sloan?
Aye.
Mr. Stecker?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. I got so many names written on my paper, it's like Chinese checkers here. Okay, under item number 9, manager's report. Janet, anything else to offer this evening?
Okay, I do have a few things to mention. Just wanted to let everybody know that the Village Hall will be closed on Monday, May 28th in observance of Memorial Day. As always, our police office will be open 24/7. Also, our 4th of July entries are starting to come in, but wanted to let everybody know to please get your entry forms in for the 4th of July parade. That's sneaking up on us very quickly. Have been asked to relay for all the seniors out there that on June 5th, we will be hosting an ARP driver safety class. You can call Molly Keene at Village Hall to make a reservation. They have been very well attended. We've had, I believe, 2 of them in the last several months. Wanted to know for anyone who may want to come out that Sam will be speaking at the Aging Well Mayfair Rec Center to the seniors tomorrow at 1 o'clock.
I'm going to keep them up.
We may still be here.
June 9th will be the Relay for Life at Mayfair Park in support of cancer. Well, not in support of cancer, but, you know, for fundraising, cancer fundraising. You
Fighting
can
cancer.
look at relayforlife.org to either sign a team up or to donate to the cause. And the most important item of note, this Thursday will be our bid day for our municipal aggregation program that was passed by referendum in March. And we did see an article in today's paper where the Village of Gurnee, who is also being represented by NIMEC, was able to get an energy rate with First Energy for 4.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And we have had notification that ComEd rate will be rising to 8.5 cents per kilowatt hour in July. So that is almost a 50% reduction in the ComEd rate. So we're hoping to get such a favorable rate, and we will know by Friday what our rates are. So looking forward to passing those savings along to the residents.
Yeah, that's huge. I got that article today and passed it along to Janet. That's a very favorable rate. You looked at some of the other ones that were out there. I think Oak Brook and Oak Park were like 5.12, so it's considerably less than that. So cross our fingers that we'll be able to lock in a rate similar in fashion to save the residents certainly money in their electrical power supply. Attorney's report, anything?
Picking up on that electrical aggregation issue, it's been my firm's experience that the NIMEC sends out a master agreement, and we've reviewed that and made some requested changes, and NIMEC's response has been that they will pass those changes on to the successful bidder, and once those bids are in, you sometimes are dealing with companies that are located in Ohio or out of Illinois, and they've been resistant to some of those changes. It's similar to the certification that I've talked about. You've got to certify that you're not delinquent in any fees owed or taxes owed to the Illinois Department of Revenue. There's a requirement to certify that in public contracts, and EEO and Department of Human Rights certifications, Drug-Free Workplace Act, things like that. We have a requirement under the Freedom of Information Act that any material that is a village document that's in the possession of a third party, if you get a FOIA for it, you have to have that third party turn it over to you. So we've included language that they agree to do those things. And some of these companies in other municipalities are balking at that. And you find yourself between a rock and a hard place because you're getting these savings passed on to you, yet they're like, well, we just won't sign the contract then. So just giving everybody a heads up on that. We haven't gone to bid yet, so I don't know who the successful bidder will be, but that may be a possibility. And then I think sometimes you just swallow hard and hope for the best.
Yeah,
So
but wouldn't you think, though, that any of the companies that are gonna bid, that are covered under the purview of the ICC, would be mandated, no matter where they're from, to follow the guidelines of that, which are pretty simple guidelines
Yeah.
if they're required by certainly the state of Illinois, and I would imagine that the Attorney General would have some involvement with making sure that all those pieces are in the puzzle, or else guess what? We're not gonna let you bid. You have to follow Illinois law or get out. I would think that that would be part and parcel of any vendor that would come to the state of Illinois through the ICC that wants to be a partner with any municipal government.
well, I know in one municipality, the response was, hey, we're a Fortune 500 company, you know, so it's like, okay, so you don't have to comply, but I'm telling you, that's what's happening out there in the real world is you're running into that problem with getting these certifications. You can still approve the contract, but like I said, you gotta swallow hard and do it then, so.
Well, thank you for the
Yes,
updated
sir.
information as well. Let's see. Chief Padlick, any information to share?
Yes, this weekend, in conjunction with Memorial Day, the police department will be conducting another roadblock campaign. We'll be focusing on safety restraints, alcohol-related offenses, and impaired drivers. So I remind everybody, buckle up and appoint a designated driver when consuming alcohol. Also want to remind parents it's graduation time and summer barbecues, that the legal drinking age for alcohol is 21, and remind them of the violations if they think it's safe to sponsor alcohol beverages at parties on their premises. From liability standpoints and sending the children the wrong message, we're frowning upon that right now. I'd like to remind residents to visit our website. The new website on there, if they click on the police department section, they can anonymously report any kind of crime tips. So if they feel they have say a drug problem in their neighborhood, and also they can report ordinance violations, and they can do it anonymously. So if your neighbor's grass is getting too high, or you got some other violations, or you see a contractor that's not licensed in the area, please let us know. And then last thing I'd like to mention, we lost a member of the police department family today and tomorrow, wake service and tomorrow funeral for Robert Smith, former police chief. Bob was with the Westchester Police Department for over 32 years of service. And if I may ask the board for a moment of silence on his behalf. Thank you, and I'll turn over to the fire department.
Jimmy?
Fire department's just probably has another 2 weeks, week or two of hydrant testing.
Thank God.
Yeah, yeah. This one's been a long one. We've identified problems, which is one of the reasons we do it. And when that happens, the planned testing for the day doesn't go as well as we had hoped. But it's going along, and that's pretty much all I got.
Yeah, and again, some of the valves that were identified in hydrants are under repair. 901 Norfolk was one that you've identified was a problem, and that's been repaired today. Although, to shut that hydrant down, we had to shut down 10 valves. So we had to shut down people from Wedgwood all the way to Roosevelt and the businesses along Roosevelt. So there's a valve replacement scheduled for tomorrow. So in the event that they have to shut something down, it's not that expansive. So it's good that, you know, we're identifying these things and getting the valves replaced as necessary. So thank you. Miss Ann, you're up.
Tonight we have before you, as you head at your seats here, the comprehensive annual financial report for the Village of Westchester for the fiscal year ending April 30th of 2011. We received this from the auditors several weeks ago. So as you're aware, the CAFR is split into 3 sections, first of these being the introductory section. Second section is the financial section, which includes all of the relevant financial statements and schedules, the notes to the financial statements, and the required supplementary information. The third section is the unaudited statistical section that provides the analysis of financial trends, revenue capacity, debt capacity, demographic and economic information, as well as operating information for the village. We would just like to point out a few highlights, if that's okay. First, we want to direct your attention to pages 1 and 2, which is the independent auditor's report. It should be noted that the village received an unqualified opinion on our financial statements, which is the highest level of attestation that the auditors can provide. On pages marked MD&A 1 through 14, you'll find the management's discussion and analysis, which was prepared by the village manager. This document provides financial highlights and comparisons between the last 2 reporting years. If you're only going to look at one section of the CAFR, this is the most comprehensive portion and would be the portion to focus on. The basic financial statements follow the MD&A. The statement of net assets on page 3 presents the balance sheet prepared under the accrual basis of accounting. This statement includes both current and long-term assets and liabilities. It also differentiates between the governmental activities and the business type activities, which is the utility fund. You will note at the bottom that the net assets of the village's governmental activities are just over $27 million. $24 million of that are invested in equipment and infrastructure. The net assets of business type activities are $8.7 million, with $6.9 million invested in equipment and infrastructure. Pages 6 and 7 represent the governmental fund's balance sheet on a modified accrual basis of accounting, which is this statement includes only current assets and liabilities. You can note at the bottom the general fund balance at 4/30 of 11 was $4.9 million, which represents 35% of our 35% of our annual expenditures. So we are in compliance with our 30% fund balance policy as of 4/30/11, which we knew, but now we know exactly by how much. The basic financial statements are followed by the notes to the financial statements, which provide detail of various significant policies and account balance. If there are any questions about the CAFR for this year, we'd be happy to entertain them.
Any questions? I know we've just received the information today, so I would suggest that as we read up on these pieces, if there's any specific question, to certainly contact Ann between now and the next meeting. If there's anything that needs to be adjusted or addressed, we can put it on the next board as well. Sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Okay.
Make sure it's
Thank
on
you.
the cow.
On the cow, yeah. Tony, go ahead.
Okay, we got a new Papa John's in town. We got the permit down on that. PNC Bank has some work, ATI Therapy. There's a lot of permits that are going out on time, a lot of work. This is our busy season, so we're trying to stay ahead of everything and also trying to enforce the code with grass cutting. We're trying to stay on top of that, and we can't catch everybody, but if we are informed, we are going out there and stopping these. landscapers or whoever. It's,
Tony, when's the Papa John's? Is that something that's, are they opening right away, or are they doing some
they're in
build-outs, or
construction.
what are they
They're
doing?
a build-out as we speak.
Is there any
Probably-
target date?
Pardon?
Any target date that they have?
End of June,
In the June.
yes.
Okay. Also, on that vein as well, Goodwill Industries, as everyone knows, is taking up several suites, including the Old Scott's Pet Shop at 31st and Wolf Road.
It
They
also
did
would open in end of June.
end of June as well. They did have a job fair. We opened up our little resource center for them, and it worked out very well. They had on-the-spot drug testing for any persons that were submitting an application, and they hired over 30 people on Saturday to start their working operation, which will reveal sales tax as well to the village.
And we're
So
still working on Dunkin' Donuts.
we're glad to have them in the game, so to speak. The manager's name is Will, and he's taken an active role in the hiring and producing a good product for Goodwill. Gregory, anything on the 911 technology?
Nothing specific at 911, but with regards to the website, we're very proud to be displaying it. Of course, it's a refresh and a redesign from what we had. In looking at some of the numbers, I don't know if it has anything to do with some things we did in promoting our website on Google, through Yahoo, and using some keywords to attract people to our website. But the amount of people that have visited our website recently has increased, so we're very excited about that. As the chief had mentioned, we're going to work into some of the logistics of it, but being able to place a form online to allow people to anonymously report long grass, as we had mentioned throughout this process, it's very difficult to catch that, and it's sometimes difficult to notice that when it's happening. And it's another way, we're going to, again, put the logistics together on it, but it's another way for people to report that. We'll have a repository and definitely pass that along to the people that'll handle that situation. But once again, thanks for all the advice and information that people have given with regards to the website. If there's anything as you're perusing it still, please don't hesitate to forward it to me, Molly, Hope, who've put some additions on since the very beginning. But we definitely want to keep it up. We want to keep it fresh. We want to keep things, as much information on there as possible. So if anybody here, as well as in the audience or throughout town, have any information that they think should be on there and it's important for people to see, be happy to add that as long as there's a viable place for it on our website.
I think. Greg, another thing, the question has come up in the past, and I'm sorry I didn't ask you earlier today, is where are we in our the consolidation information that we're at? I know there was some hiccups along the way of gathering
Correct.
data, so maybe for our next meeting, you could review to us where we're going or what
Correct.
we're doing or
Yes,
what the plan may be for the future.
Yes, at this point, what we had done, we were waiting for some data. We had received that data, but we also, we were holding off on a payment. We ended up making that payment at a previous meeting, and they're compiling the final statistics to give us a final report. But I will definitely be in touch with them tomorrow, for that matter, and make
See
sure
where
that
we're
I get
at.
that back to you guys. If I hear anything in the meantime, I definitely will send it to the village manager, who could pass that information along to you as to where we stand in timeline phase.
Great. Thank you.
And I'm sure you're going to discuss the other issues, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
I'll do that. Board members' reports and business. Any Green Committee?
Yes, we're still green.
You're still green.
We had the recycling event on the 12th. Yes, I think that was prior
May
to our
12th.
last one, yeah. A little bit wet, but again, it was very successful. And again, we're looking, I think June 9th is the next e-recycling. So again, if anybody can help out, that'd be great. We had a pretty good crowd there, and I'd like to thank Brian, Sam was there. And if I missed anybody else, I apologize, but had a good group, and thank you. Yes, also would like to, just an update is the Westchester Civic Theater Group. They have a play coming up June 9th, 10th, 16th, and 17th. There's a member in the audience who is a character there. These theaters run by two individuals, Amy Bomberger and Dan Roca. It's a great addition to Westchester's character, and it's going to help us become competitive with other villages where people will see a artsy side of us. So,
And that's at St. Joe's, correct?
St. Joe's, correct.
Okay. And we do have insurance because I dropped the form off, so it was mismailed.
www.westchesterplays.com.
Tommy, anything at CAB?
Nothing at this time. Our next meeting is June 13th.
Paulie, anything special events? I know we're going to talk about the
Well, the parade, as
That's an
Janet
account.
said, we're getting more and more people to join up in the parade, so get your applications in, and we'll be happy to get a nice parade going.
When are the applications due by? June?
I think June 15th.
Okay, Frankie, I know we have some EDC people here today, so unless you have
I'm gonna
any
save it for the
comments,
cow.
we could save it for the cow. Nikki,
I'm good.
Brian, anything? Add to the game? Okay, Miss April, you forgot one notable piece in your presentation. Certainly, we're very proud of all you've been doing with your staff regarding the NATO summit and the preparation that you've been doing for months in the event that Westchester was called. I know we have a member of NIPUS that's on the civil response team, Keith Rollins, and members that would be ready to go, but certainly your leadership in the Net 17, which is our area of our radio network, is certainly laudable. I don't know if most know this, but as near as Forest Park, there were individuals that set up railroad ties across the tracks in a possibility to derail some of the metro trains that were traveling down to the city or any of the other trains that traverse those areas. I think Elmwood Park is another one as well. So, although the city of Chicago handled the situation, in my opinion, marvelously with the leadership of their new police chief, Chief McCarthy, who is from New York, and anyone that follows anything that happens in New York, they have the United Nations there, and there's, I want to say, police, demonstrator, activists, confrontations or marches pretty much all the time. So I'm sure that Chief McCarthy had a plethora of tools in his tool bag coming from the city of New York to help the city of Chicago, and I think he did a terrific job as a police chief in leading his troops in very little skirmishes over the 3 or 4 days. So he certainly has our admiration. So April alluded to this earlier, Chief Bob Smith. A distinct pleasure to work with Bob. I know Brian is a relative, and certainly Mayor Gattuso in his stead, in the time he was in here, certainly had numerous contacts with Chief Smith, and he always did a good job. He was my chief, and allowed me to ascend to the deputy chief rank based on his recommendation with board approval. So we will certainly miss Bob. We did 28 plus years together, and it was a very sad day to hear of his passing and actually see him. I remember a number of cases that we had together, and a couple of them. Bob was placed in detectives by my father back by 1976, 1977, and Bob was a great detective, And two of the cases that kind of popped out in my head as I was thinking about him today was one where there was a dry cleaners at the base of the Roosevelt Road Bridge, that an armed robbery took place, and at the time we only had a few evidence technicians, and Bob Smith Jr., of course, and Bob Smith Sr. were the ones that were there, and I marveled that Bob was able to lift a fingerprint off a belt that was used to tie the victim up in the armed robbery, and we were able to identify the offender through Bob's efforts of taking a lift off a belt and making that case. The other notable one, and there are probably plenty, but one that did strike me was the Gassner homicide at Oxford and Buckingham. And that was a case where we found a gentleman strangled inside his home, and the victim's car was gone, and the City of Chicago police were able to apprehend the people inside the car. And after long interviews and interrogations, Bob went in there and was able to elicit a confession from that suspect that ultimately landed him in prison for well over 20 years. So Bob did a host of things in the department and patrol for a short period of time. His forte was in detectives, and we all ascended to rank on the same date as lieutenants in August of 1995. He ascended to the chief and was my chief. And one thing about Bob, and I know I tried tirelessly to kind of get him to yell and scream every once in a while, but I was never successful. The Italian always came out in me. I don't know what he was, but he never got mad at anything, and I guess that's a great quality and a good man. And I'm sorry to see him passing today. And I would imagine we have the bunting up. The funeral is tomorrow. I've ordered the flag down at half-staff in his honor. He was also a Desert Storm veteran. He spent time in the military. He was in the Air National Guard. I think he did a stint in the Army National Guard, and spent time in Desert Storm when he was the chief of police. I remember distinctly having the wooden flag of our country out in front with his name on a little plaque of all the persons that were from Westchester that served in Desert Storm, and he was gone several months as the chief of police on foreign soil in Saudi Arabia, and he has the medals to prove it. So, again, he deserves certainly our respect, our admiration, and as a terrific public servant for all the years he served Westchester, he certainly served with distinction. So, one other item I'll touch on a different vein is Janet and I have been attending meetings with Commonwealth Edison as a result of the 900,000 people that were placed out of power a couple of years ago. The West Central Municipal Conference, of which now I am the president of, had meetings prior to my presidency with ComEd, and what ComEd is trying to do is put a joint operations center, an emergency together, and this would allow municipal officials and municipal people to be part and parcel of when there is an outage. There are 28 towns that are part of the region that covers the Maywood area, approximately 203,000 customers. When there are 20% of those customers out for more than 3 hours, they will initiate the Joint Operations Center and have ComEd reps present with hopefully municipal officials that will volunteer. They'd like at least 2 from possibly a non-affected community or a scantily affected community. And I've offered the village of Westchester, the grassy knoll outside here, as a staging area. The ComEd rep was here today. We have a new one. Her name is Marina. She's working in conjunction with Fabiola, who most of us know. They did an evaluation of our site. They met with Greg Riebelte, our IT guy, and I believe not only I, but she was impressed with the knowledge of how we can accomplish the goal. And I basically said I'm a little selfish, because I think if the Joint Operations Center is here, and also the Village of Melrose Park also offered as well, that, you know, if we have something here of critical nature that needs to be addressed as far as outages in a priority fashion, that, you know, we will be part and parcel from the beginning of the event, and we'll able to get the resources not only to us, but other municipalities that are affected. We initially have to send out a information letter of all the critical locations that we have in the village, and then the other pieces that are critical in nature but may have, say, generators or something that could go down, say the retirement home on Wolf Road. That's a critical venue. If we had a hospital, that would be a critical venue, although they may have generators, but what happens if their generators went down? And I think the goal is to put municipal people on the front lines with the ComEd people, so we can report back to affected municipalities, maybe with some better timing of when things would be restored, and actually be part of prioritization of getting those assets to the affected communities as quickly as possible. Now, we've been, you know, this is a new venture for us, but last year or 2 years ago when we had these things happen, we all sat patiently on a conference call and basically listened to a lot of gobbledygook. So here, I think we're going to be able to be on the front lines of it and actually have an effect where we can call municipalities back, and that was my 2 cents worth, that we may be able to call whatever the community is that's affected and say, yes, you should be able to have someone in your town by such and such a time, and give some more definite timelines, at least to the municipal partners that are going to be receiving the calls from the community at large. So they talked about potentially 6 phone lines. Greg gave them some information of some IP address operations, possibly through Comcast, that could be easily remedied, voice over IP stuff that's beyond my comprehension at this point in time. But, you know, I think the value that we have in Greg, and certainly the ComEd rep was certainly pleased at the location and the centralization of our community, although, you know, it may be affected as well. So that's moving forward. As more information comes, we will certainly highlight that, and I think we want to stay in the best partnership arrangement we can, certainly hopefully to get our service up running as quickly as possible, especially if this becomes a resource center. So some of the things that are out there. I don't think I have anything else.
Sam.
So is there, a Green Intelligence Award on it? I forgot that, and Wally should have spoke of this.
I forget.
At the West Central meeting, Westchester was awarded the Green Intelligence Award for all the green things that we do, and certainly the Green Committee and Trustee Novak being part of that. But the things we've done in the past with some paint recycling and the toters that we have and the shredding events that we've had, and certainly all the things that we've done. If you've noticed in front, we've had the compactors from Waste Management as part of the contract. We have a few others to set out in the area to do that. So we really are a green community. We've partnered with MWRD for the rain barrels. And I know at the Fun Fest, Trustee Novak has some surprises as far as working with the MWRD, who are certainly our partners.
And Waste Management has been very active in
understanding Westchester's green initiatives and have been working. They've actually, Matt is part of the green team, so.
Good. Also, tomorrow night, 6:30 to 8:30 at the Westchester Community Church. May 30th, I'm sorry, 6:30 to 8:30, Westchester Community Church, 1840 Westchester Boulevard. Our CMAP second meeting. Next step in creating a comprehensive plan and the visioning workshop to get us to 2030. So that's on the horizon as well. And thank you to Reverend Mills for allowing us to utilize his facility once again. Okay, anything else that I missed? Okay. I don't believe we have any executive session, so I'd ask for a motion, a second, to adjourn our board meeting.
So moved.
Very brief executive.
There is executive session, and the
Very.
topic is
Personnel.
personnel. Okay, so we're gonna have an executive session, a brief one, after this cow. Okay, committee of the whole. All right, is there a motion, a second, to adjourn our board meeting?
So moved. Second.
Okay, Tommy and Brian. All those in favor of adjourning our meeting?
Aye.
Say
Aye.
Any opposition, say no.